The closing table was long and polished. An attorney sat at the head. Documents were arranged in 2 sets, one for each party. I arrived first. I had been sitting there for 4 minutes when the door opened and Claire walked in. She was dressed the way she always dressed for professional meetings. Composed, deliberate, nothing left to chance. She sat across from me. The attorney introduced himself and explained the process. Claire opened the folder in front of her. Her name was printed at the top of the first page as the buyer. My name was on the other set as the seller. 1 year ago, she had sat across from me at a different table, our kitchen table. She had told me plainly that I did not have what it takes to run a business, that I would fail before I found my footing, that I was not the type. She said she was telling me because she knew me and she was being honest. I listened to all of it. I did not argue. I did not defend myself. I stood up, went to my home office, and started working. She left 3 weeks later. I did not ask her to stay. 1 year after that conversation, she was sitting across from me, signing documents to buy what I had built. The attorney asked if she had reviewed the terms. She said yes. She picked up the pen. I watched her sign. I did not say anything. I did not need to. The document said everything. My name is Nathan. I was 36 years old, and I had spent most of my career being capable inside structures built by other people. I was good at it. I had made other people's businesses run better. I had fixed their operations and streamlined their logistics and watched them take the credit. I had finally decided to build my own. I had been working on the business plan for 11 weeks before I told Claire. I did not hide it. I just was not ready to say it out loud yet. I told her on a Sunday evening after dinner. I walked her through the concept. A boutique operations consultancy targeting mid-sized businesses in transition. I had 3 potential clients I had already spoken to informally. I had a savings runway I had calculated to the month. I slid the summary across the table and watched her pick it up. Claire was analytically sharp and professionally risk-averse. She had built her own stable career through careful positioning. She processed other people's ambitions through that same lens. I knew that. I told myself I was ready for whatever she said. She read the summary slowly, not quickly. She asked 2 questions about the competitive landscape, about my plan for month 7 if the first 2 clients did not convert. I answered both. My answers were honest. The landscape was crowded, but I had a specific positioning. And month 7 was the month I had been most worried about, too. I said so. She set the summary down. She told me she thought the idea was reasonable, but that she had concerns about my ability to sustain it through the hard period. She said she knew how I handled uncertainty, that I internalized it, that it affected my performance, that she had watched it happen. She said she was not trying to discourage me. She was trying to be the person who told me the truth. Then she said she did not think I would make it through the first year. I asked if she thought I would fail. She said the odds were against me, and she thought specifically me, not someone else, would struggle with what this required. I told her I heard her. I picked up the summary. I took it back to my office. I closed the door. I did not come back out that evening. I did not cry. I did not throw anything. I just sat at my desk with the summary in front of me and her words in my head. She had delivered her verdict as honesty and framed it as care. I had heard it and gone back to work, but I did not know yet whether that verdict would break me or become fuel. I just knew I was not going to stop. Not that night. Not the next morning either. I opened my laptop and kept working. The summary stayed on the desk. I did not look at it. I did not need to. I had memorized every word before she finished saying them. I registered the business on a Tuesday morning. I did not tell Claire the registration had gone through. She knew I was moving forward. I had been working from the home office every evening. But the formal step happened quietly and without announcement. I received the confirmation email and read it twice. I printed it and put it in a folder in my desk drawer. The folder was new. The business had a name now. It felt different than it had the night before. More real. Heavier. Ray called that afternoon. He was my former colleague and now my first client. He had watched me solve operational problems for years. He had called me before the business even had a name. This was the first call where he used the word contract. He said his company needed someone to rebuild their vendor intake process before Q3. He wanted me to do it. He asked what the engagement would cost. I gave him a number I had calculated the night before. Fair, not underselling, not desperate. Ray said he would need to run it through his director, but that he did not anticipate a problem. He called back in 2 hours. There was no problem. I closed my laptop and sat at my desk for a minute. First client. First contract. I had been working toward this moment for months. It did not feel like victory. It felt like permission to keep going. I told Claire that evening that I had my first client and that a contract was being drafted. She was making dinner. She did not stop what she was doing. She said that was good. Then she said getting one client was the easy part. The question was whether I could build a pipeline while delivering on the first engagement. I told her I knew that. She said one client was not a business. It was a start. I told her I knew what it was. I said it without edge. I'm in it without reassurance seeking. I was not looking for her to revise her verdict. I had stopped expecting that. She put plates on the table. We ate dinner. We talked about other things. Her work, a friend's birthday, the weather. I washed the dishes. She went to bed early. I stayed up and worked on the contract Ray had sent over. I did not think about Claire's doubt while I worked. I had stopped thinking about it during the day. It was there in the background like a low hum. I had learned to work through it. I did not know yet what that hum compounded into over 12 months. I just knew I could not afford to stop. I replied to Ray's email and closed my laptop. The kitchen was dark. The folder with the registration confirmation was in my desk drawer. I went to bed. Claire was already asleep. I lay there and listened to her breathe and tried to remember when I had stopped talking to her about the things that mattered. I could not find the exact date. I just knew it had happened somewhere between her verdict and the contract. I turned over and closed my eyes. Tomorrow I would start building the pipeline. Tonight I would sleep. The Ray engagement was 3 weeks from completion when a second potential client went cold. I had spoken to a logistics company twice. 2 good conversations. The contact had gone warm, asked for a proposal, received it, and then stopped responding. I sent one follow-up and waited 5 days. I sent one more. Nothing. I closed the thread and moved the contact to a dormant folder. I did not chase it further. I had learned that chasing was not persistence. It was just noise. That same week, I built out a contact list of 12 businesses I had identified as strong fits for my service model. I did not send mass outreach. I wrote 12 individual emails, each one specific to the company. The problem I had identified from public information. Well, I would propose. I sent them over 3 days. 4 per day. I tracked the opens. 7 opened. 3 responded. I scheduled calls with all 3. I did not feel excited. I felt busy. There was a difference. Claire found the contact list on the kitchen table one morning. I had left it there the night before and forgotten to take it back to my office. She picked it up. She read it. When I came downstairs, she was holding it. She asked how many of the 12 had responded. I told her 3 had scheduled calls. She set the list down. She said that was a reasonable conversion rate for cold outreach. I told her I knew. She said she was not trying to manage me. She just wanted to understand where things stood. I told her where things stood. 3 calls. Ray's project wrapped in 3 weeks. I would have 1 delivered engagement and 3 active conversations by the end of the month. She asked what happened if none of the 3 converted. I told her then I built a new list. She nodded. She picked up her bag and went to work. I picked up the contact list and took it back to my office. I sat at my desk and looked at the names of the 3 people who had responded. I had answered Claire's question without hesitation. I knew what I would do if none of them converted. I would build a new list. That was what I had told her. That was what I believed. But answering a question cleanly and being prepared for the answer to be tested were 2 different things. Month 3 was almost over. The Ray engagement would end soon. The pipeline was 3 cold calls and a hope. I opened my calendar and looked at month 5. It was empty. I sat there for a minute. Then I closed the calendar and started writing emails to the people who had not responded to my first list. I was not worried yet. but I was paying attention. Month 5 arrived faster than I had expected. One of the 3 calls converted. A small engagement. 8 weeks. Real money, but not enough to carry the runway on its own. The second call went to a competitor the client had been speaking to in parallel. I did not take it personally. The third call resulted in a follow-up meeting. I prepared for it extensively. I dressed for it. I drove 40 minutes to attend it. The client said they needed to revisit their budget internally before committing. I thanked them for their time. I drove 40 minutes home. I recalculated my runway that evening. I had 4 months of comfortable operating margin left. After that, the math required a new client. I closed the spreadsheet and sat in the dark for a minute. Ray called me mid-month, not with a new engagement, with information. He told me that a former colleague of ours, a woman named Dana, who ran a small competing consultancy, had been actively prospecting the same mid-sized transition market. She was using her established client base to generate referrals. Ray said he was not telling me to alarm me. He was telling me because he thought I should know the competitive picture had someone specific in it now. I thanked him. After the call, I pulled up Dana's LinkedIn. Her client list was 3 times the length of mine. She had been doing this for 6 years. I was in month 5. I closed the browser and sat at my desk. I was not scared. I was not discouraged. I was just aware. There was someone else in the water, and she had been swimming longer than me. That evening, Claire asked how things were going. It was the first time in 3 weeks she had asked directly. I told her honestly. 1 active engagement. 1 pending client who had gone quiet. A competitor who had been in the market 6 years and had a referral engine I did not have. She listened. She did not say she told me so. She asked what I was going to do about the competitor. I said I was going to stop worrying about the competitor and focus on building my referral base. She nodded. She did not say whether she thought that was right. She just nodded. I sat with that for a moment. She had not taken the opening to be right. I did not know what to do with that. I had been bracing for her doubt for months. Her silence was harder to read than her verdict had been. I thanked her for asking. She said good night. I went back to my office. The runway was 4 months. The pipeline had a hole in it. I opened my calendar and looked at the next 30 days. I was not going to fix everything in 30 days. But I could make 30 days of calls. I could write 30 days of emails. I could show up for 30 days in a row and see where I landed. I started making a list. I worked until 2 in the morning. I did not tell Claire. She was already asleep. I turned off the light and went to bed. Tomorrow I would start the 30 days. I did not know if it would be enough. I just knew I was not going to stop. I called every delivered client I had ever had, not just from the current business. For my entire professional career, I did not ask for work. I asked for 30 minutes to understand what problems they were currently navigating. 11 calls over 2 weeks. 7 people took the call. 3 of those 7 described situations where my specific skill set was directly relevant. I did not pitch on the calls. I listened. I asked questions. I thanked them for their time. I sent a short follow-up to each of the 3 afterward. Specific, not templated. 1 paragraph each. I did not expect anything. I was just staying in motion. My former manager from my last corporate role called me back after receiving my follow-up. Her name was Janet. She had left the industry 2 years ago. She said she was now on the board of a mid-sized manufacturing company going through a leadership transition. The operational piece was a mess. She said she had been looking for someone. She said she could not believe she did not think of me sooner. I scheduled a full meeting for the following week. I hung up and sat very still for a moment. Janet was not a maybe. Janet was a board member. She had seen me work for 3 years. She knew what I could do. I closed my laptop and sat in the quiet. The meeting was not a contract, but it was not a cold call either. It was the closest thing to a door opening that I'd felt in months. I did not tell Claire about Janet's call that evening, not because I was hiding it, because I did not want to explain the size of it before I knew whether it became real. I made dinner instead. Claire came home. We ate. She asked about my day. I said it was productive. She said good. I refilled her water glass. We watched television. I went to bed thinking about the meeting with Janet. I did not sleep until late. I lay there trying to figure out whether I was protecting myself from Claire's doubt or protecting myself from my own hope. They were getting harder to tell apart. If I told her about Janet and the meeting went badly, I would have to sit across from her and watch her not say "I told you so." That was worse than her saying it. If I did not tell her and the meeting went well, I would have succeeded in silence. I did not know which outcome I was more afraid of. I turned over and watched the clock. 2 in the morning. 3. I stopped watching. The meeting was in 6 days. I needed to be ready. Not for Claire. For Janet. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. The doubt was still there. I was just better at working through it now. That was the only difference between month 1 and month 6. I was still afraid. I did not stop anymore. The Janet meeting was real. The engagement was the largest I had taken on. A 6-month operational restructure for a company with genuine complexity and a board that expected reporting. It was exactly the kind of work I had built this business to do. I drove home after the meeting and parked in the driveway. I called Ray, not to celebrate, to tell someone who would understand what it meant professionally. Ray asked what the contract value was. I told him. He was quiet for a second. Then he said I was not a startup anymore. I sat in the car and let that land. I had been running for 6 months. I had not stopped to look at what I had built. Ray said it for me. I was not a startup anymore. I signed the Janet engagement contract on a Thursday morning. That evening I told Claire. I did not build to it. I set the signed copy on the kitchen table and told her the engagement value and the scope and the timeline. She read the first page. She looked up. She asked if I could deliver it alone or whether I needed to bring in support. I told her I had already identified a contractor I had worked with before who could handle the secondary deliverables. She nodded. She read the second page. Then she set the contract down. She said this was significant. I said yes. She said she did not think I would get here this fast. A pause. I told her I knew she did not. I said it without anger, without satisfaction, without anything she could use as an opening to make it about her dynamic. I picked up the contract and took it back to my office. I heard her sit down at the kitchen table behind me. I did not turn around. I worked the Janet engagement for 6 months. I delivered every milestone on schedule. At the final presentation to the board, Janet introduced me as someone she would use again without hesitation. I thanked her. I drove home. I updated my case study folder. I built a new contact list. The business was not a startup anymore, but the relationship was the same. Claire and I still share the house. We still ate dinner together. We still slept in the same bed. But something had shifted in the kitchen that night when I told her I knew she did not think I would get there. I had said it plainly. She had not responded. The silence had not been hostile. It had just been there. I did not know what to do with it. I had spent 6 months proving something I had not needed to prove. The business was real. The engagement was delivered. Janet would use me again. But I was sitting in my office on a Sunday afternoon, and Claire was in the living room, and neither of us was talking about the thing that had happened. I did not know what the shape of this relationship was anymore. I just knew that the business was growing and the silence was growing with it. I opened my laptop and started building the next contact list. It was easier than figuring out what to say to her. 3 weeks after the Janet engagement closed, Claire told me she wanted to talk. She used that specific phrasing. I want to talk. In our household, that had always meant she had prepared what she was going to say. I cleared the kitchen table. We sat down. She had a notepad. She told me she had been thinking about her own professional situation. Her current role had plateaued. She had capital saved. She had been looking at what I had built. The client base. The Janet case study. The positioning. She believed there was a market for it beyond what one person could service. She wanted to discuss the possibility of coming in as a partner or acquiring the business outright and scaling it with a larger team. I sat there and listened. She had not brought a notepad to the kitchen table in years. I asked if she wanted to buy the business. She said, or partner. She was open to the structure. I reminded her that she told me I would fail before I started. She said she knew what she had said. I told her I wanted to make sure we were both clear on that before we talked about structure. She said she was wrong about my ability to execute. She was telling me that now. I told her I heard her say it, but I wanted to understand something. Was she here because she believed in the business, or because she had watched me prove her wrong and now she wanted in? A long pause. She said both. I told her that was the most honest thing she had said to me about this since the beginning. I looked at her notepad. I asked what her number was. She told me. I was quiet for a moment. The number was serious. She had been thinking about this longer than she had let on. I said I would have my attorney draw up a valuation. If the number was right, I would consider a sale. Not a partnership. A sale. She asked why not a partnership. I told her because I knew how we worked together and I knew what I needed this to stay. She wrote something on her notepad. She nodded slowly. I told her if she bought it, she ran it. I would consult on transition for 90 days, and then I would start the next one. She asked if I would walk away from what I built. I told her I built it in a year. I could build another one. She looked at me for a long moment. She said she needed to think about the structure. I said okay. She left the kitchen. I sat at the table for a while. I did not feel triumphant. I felt something quieter, a specific clarity that came from having been exactly who I needed to be in a conversation I had not planned for. I had not known I was going to say I would start another business until I heard myself say it. But once I said it, I knew it was true. The business was proof of something, but the something was not the business. The something was me. Claire could buy the files, the contracts, the case study. She could not buy the part that had built it. That part was still sitting at the kitchen table. I stood up. I washed the dishes. I went to my office. I opened a new document. I did not write anything yet. I just looked at the blank page. It looked the same as it had a year ago. I was not afraid of it anymore. I closed the document and went to bed. Claire was already asleep. I lay there and thought about what it meant to sell the proof of something to the person who had said the proof was impossible. I did not have an answer. I just knew I was going to find out. My attorney produced a formal valuation. The number was higher than Claire's offer. Not dramatically, but meaningfully. My attorney told me I could negotiate from the valuation or take Claire's number as a starting point and counter. I looked at the valuation document for a long time. I told my attorney to send it to Claire's attorney and let the process work. I did not set a deadline. I said if the number was not met, I was not selling, and that was fine. I hung up and sat in my office. The valuation was not a surprise. I had run the numbers myself, but seeing them on letterhead was different. Someone else had looked at what I built and put a number on it. That number was not about Claire. It was about the work. I closed the folder and went to make dinner. Claire's attorney came back within a week with a counter. The counter met the valuation number. I read the response in my car outside my attorney's office. I read it twice. I called my attorney and said proceed. I drove home. Claire was there. I told her the attorneys would handle the documentation from here. She said okay. We were both professional about it. The kitchen table was just a kitchen table again. We ate dinner. We talked about her day. We talked about the weather. We did not talk about the valuation or the sale or what any of it meant. I washed the dishes. She went to bed early. I stayed up and worked on the next thing. In the 2 weeks before closing, I began outlining the next business. I did not announce it. I worked on it in the evenings in my office, the same way I had worked on the first one. Quietly, specifically, with a savings runway calculated to the month. I identified 3 potential clients for a different service model. I wrote to 2 of them informally. One wrote back within a day. I scheduled a call. I did not tell Claire about the call. I did not hide it. I just did not announce it. One evening, she knocked on my office door. She looked at the papers on my desk. She asked if I was already building something else. I said yes. She said I was not kidding. I said I was not. She stood in the doorway for a moment. Then she said for what it was worth, she was glad she was wrong. I looked at her. I told her me too. She nodded. She closed the door. I sat at my desk and looked at the papers. She had said she was glad. I'd said me too. We both meant it. But glad and healed were not the same thing. The closing was in 3 days. I would sit across from her at a table. She would sign documents to buy what she told me I cannot build. I would sign documents to sell it. The attorneys would notarize everything. We would walk out. I did not know what I would feel when I sat down across from her. I just knew I was going to show up. I had been showing up for a year. One more table was not going to stop me. I closed my laptop and went to bed. The closing was in 3 days. I was ready. I was not sure for what, but I was ready. I arrived at the attorney's office 4 minutes early. I sat on my side of the table. The documents were arranged. My attorney was beside me. Claire arrived with her attorney 2 minutes later. She sat across from me. The room was quiet in the way closing rooms are always quiet. Everyone present. Everything prepared. The outcome already decided, and now only requiring signatures. The attorney walked through the documents in order. Claire signed where indicated. Her pen moved steadily. She did not hesitate on any page. I watched her sign my business over to herself. The client list, the case studies, the positioning I had spent a year building. I did not feel the loss of it. I felt the cleanness of it. When it was my turn, I signed where indicated. My handwriting was the same as it always was. Not rushed, not careful, just mine. The attorney collected the documents and thanked both parties. Claire's attorney said something about transition logistics. My attorney responded. Claire and I stood at the same time. She extended her hand across the table. I shook it. She held it for 1 second longer than a professional handshake required. Then she let go. I picked up my folder. I thanked the attorney. I walked to the elevator. I pressed the button. The doors opened. I got in. I did not build the business to prove anything to Claire. I built it because she said I could not, and I needed to know which one of us was right. Now I know. She knows too. She paid for the answer. I am already working on the next question. The elevator opened to the lobby. I walked to my car. The folder was in my hand. The business was not mine anymore. I had started it in a year of silence and doubt and 7 clients who said yes when I asked. I had sold it in 45 minutes at a table with my name on one side and hers on the other. I started the car. I did not look back at the building. I did not need to. The next business was already outlined on my laptop. The first call was already scheduled. Claire had bought the proof. I was keeping the part that built it. I drove home. The folder sat on the passenger seat. The car was quiet. The quiet was mine now. I am over at where silence ends. Have you ever built something that became the answer to a question someone else asked about you, and then sold it to them because the answer was worth more than the thing itself?